This is part of the deal. I'm going to show you guys what the ins and outs are. And there's some other things I want to talk about too while I'm here. 13 best practices. Won't take all that long to get through here. Try not to borrow any tool more than once. Whenever you get out there working, assuming you guys are you guys gonna be working on something for a living eventually. You're gonna be the people that know how to do stuff other people don't know how to do, so that you'll be the one they call when they have a problem. And then what you're here for, you want to be able to do stuff other people can't do. Usually whenever I'm talking to folks, I'll say, I've got a lawnmower, I got an F525 John Deere lawnmower with a Kawasaki engine in it, and it's got a 4-foot cut, and it just drives really, really good. It's even got headlights that light up the whole backyard if I want to do it at night. So I got $100, and I got a yard that takes about 30 minutes to cut. Who'll cut my yard for me? You can use my lawnmower, okay? Raise your hand if you'll cut my yard for $100, okay? Nobody is wanting to earn an easy $100 in 30 minutes? Okay, 30-minute yard. It takes 30 minutes to cut it. On my lawnmower, and it's a riding mower, you know? All right, so when I usually ask that, let your hands go up, unless somebody thinks I'm trying to put one over them. Then I say, but the lawnmower, when I engage the mower, it blows a fuse and kills the engine. I need you to fix that and then cut the yard. So I don't have any takers, because typically people don't know what to do with something like that. The shop manual for that lawnmower looks like a car shop manual. It's about that thick. It's got complicated wiring schematics. Of course, I had that problem and I fixed it. I didn't have to hire anybody to fix it because I was smart enough to figure out what was going on. That's the point. You want to be smart enough to figure out what's going on. Try not to borrow any tool more than once. One of the things that I used to have problems with when I was working, I worked for many a year at the Ford dealership in Dothan and some other places before that. One of the things I stopped having in my toolbox early in my career as a mechanic, where other people were, was I stopped buying crescent wrenches, because crescent wrenches are what they always want to borrow. You know what I'm saying? Because whenever you're breaking loose some of your big air conditioner lines and stuff, it's nice to have crescent wrenches on hand. So of course, sometimes if you've got the wrench that is the right size, it may be this long for one that big. And a crescent wrench, you can have a nice short, bite thing, but people would always borrow crescent wrenches and never bring them back. I had a guy that worked next to me at the Ford place. He's passed away now. He had never. But one of the biggest problems I had with him was, when I first started working on transmissions, some of those Ford transmission lines had a little tool that you had to put in there and unlatch the transmission line. We had on some of those early 80s transmission lines going to the radiator. And I would, since I found out that I needed one of those, and I says, what do I take this line loose with? He goes, you use this tool. The shop owns this one. So I used the tool once. When a tool truck came, I went out there and I said, I need one of these tools. I gave him the OTC part number, $11. He sold it to me. I paid him, and I came in and I had one in my toolbox. Well, the guy that did most of the transmission work, it was in the next stall, that had shown me that tool to start with, lost the tool that belonged to the shop. This little black thing probably fell down in the car. I don't know where it went. But he came and borrowed mine. So I says, this is annoying. So he kept borrowing mine and borrowing mine and borrowing mine. I said, I'll tell you what, let me just give you that one and I'll buy me another one off the tool truck. So I gave him that one, bought me another one. And then he lost the one I gave him and wanted to keep coming to borrow. Does that irritate you? Well, he kept borrowing my channel lock pliers, the same guy. And I had Richard written on them with an engraver. And he says, I'd like to use these to pop this transmission linkage loose with. And so I said, then he kept borrowing them, borrowing them. I said, well, you're using them more than I am for that, so why don't you just go ahead and hang on to them. If I need them, I'll come get them from you. Because he was just writing the next service bay. And I was trying to be nice to the guy. I was trying to get along with everybody, Incidentally, here's a soft skills thing. 85% of the people that fail in their careers fail because they can't get along with other people. Did you know that? 85%. Not because they're not good at what they do, but because they can't get along with people. If you get on the wrong side, you see a lot of that when you were in basic training, people that couldn't get along with other people, and you're a jerk, nobody wants to have anything to do with them. You know what I'm saying? All right, so. Huh? Yeah, so you gotta be able to work as a team or you're not going anywhere, right? So anyway, so the guy, he was a foul-mouthed little guy. So about a month later, I was going out the back of the shop, which was way down, it's a big shop. And I saw my pliers laying on top of the steam cleaner. Had my name on them. He had left them back there and didn't even know where they were. Which he wasn't managing them very well. And so I just took them back and I put them back in my toolbox. So they were my pliers anyway. And so without telling him I found them, I went back over and I says, what happened to my pliers? I need to get them back from you. And his defense mechanism was to just throw a big fit and start cussing, you know. So, well, never mind, I ain't no use in getting mad about it. But I never told him I found them, and he never asked to borrow them again. Right. The service advisors, you know the little horseshoe-shaped tools you take radios out of the dash with, you know? I made me some out of welding rods. I got an old welding rod, I ground the stuff off of them, and he bent them around 1 inch and a 16th socket, and I made me a set. Well, the people in the write-up area were always having to pull radios out to send them off and get them repaired for people in cars under warranty, so they come borrow my radio tools, borrow my radio tools, borrow my radio tools. So I got a bunch more welding rods, and I made every one of the service advisors a set of radio tools. Here's your set of radio tools. They lost all of those, and they kept coming and borrowing mine. This drives me up the wall. One time this guy gave, this chemical salesman gave me and the other guy that was working there, both of us long yellow transmission funnels that were really nice. Well, the other guy took his home and was always borrowing mine. See what I mean? Provide your own tools, right? That's what I'm getting at. Always provide your own tools, and don't be hard to get along with. Don't start screwing an important bolt or plug into its hole and walk away thinking you'll remember to tighten it. Like, this is a prime example. You're doing an oil change. You pop the oil drain plug out, you know, you take the filter off and all that. You know, you're letting all that stuff drain out. And then you get your oil drain plug and you start it in there and you got your finger on it and somebody says, hey Joe, can you come give me a hand with this? Okay, so you go give him a hand with it and you come back and you forgot about the oil drain plug. You put the oil filter on, when you fill it up with oil, it happens not to have any kind of leak or anything, and then it drives out and you're worried, you know, and if it comes out somewhere, you're in big trouble because you're the last one. That's why a lot of places will put a little seal on it so you can see if somebody's been messing with it. So spark plug, same way. If you're screwing the spark plugs in and you don't get one screwed all the way in there, what happens with the spark plug that doesn't get screwed all the way in there, and I got one laying up here somewhere that somebody actually didn't get it screwed all the way in there in an aluminum head because they cross-threaded it a little bit, and they thought, well, I cross-threaded that, maybe it'll be all right. Maybe if I just cover it up, he won't find anything about it. Well, 2 or 3 days later, it comes back misfired on that cylinder because, did you know this little tapered seat at the base of this spark plug, the reason it's there is to carry heat out of the spark plug into the head. The little washer on some of them, the heat goes through out of the spark plug into the head and it's carried away. This guy didn't tighten the spark plug all the way down. The spark plug looked like you put a torch on the end of it and burned it up. I could dig it up over, I got it in a can or something right over here on my teaching desk. But the simple fact was, we had to fix the threads in that head. And you know why? You know, the spark plugs, a lot of them now are down in a hole. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so if you take the spark plug, how do you get that spark plug way down in that hole if your socket doesn't happen to hold a spark plug? You don't throw it down in there, okay? I've actually seen people do that. They throw the plug down in the hole, just throw it down in there, and they don't even think about the fact that it could bend the gap shut, or it could ding that first thread on the head, so that we're starting there. What you gonna do? Put a piece of hose on it, like a piece of 3/8, you know, straight piece of 3/8 fuel line hose, or something, and screw it on in there, start it and screw it as far in as you can with your fingers, and then take the socket, bring it down to your 15 foot-pound, or that's usually what it's supposed to be. You understand what a foot-pound is? What's a foot-pound?
Torque ratio?
It's torque, yeah, but you got, it's 1 foot, a 1 foot bar with a pound of pressure. You got me? That's why we do we torque all of our lugs out here with torque wrenches. Right? You remember what I'm talking about? Anyway, so you make sure that that's the right torque, and you make sure it's screwed all the way in, you make sure it's good and tight. I worry about that, and one time I had one that the plug, the threads in the head were kind of messed up, and I was working on, and I ran a tap down in there. You got to understand thread pitch. You know, this is 14 millimeter, 1 1/4 thread pitch. That's what a spark plug is. All right, so you screw this thing down in there. They've got some stuff, a marking compound called Prussian blue. And so what I did was, to make sure that that thing was going all the way down in there making contact, I put some Prussian blue on that and I screwed it down in there, and when it touches it smears the Prussian blue, but the only place I put it was on that one, you know, beveled surface right there. Okay, so when I screwed it in, I screwed it back out, I could tell that it had touched and was making a good tight contact. And that way I knew. If it's down in a hole, you can't tell what's going on. But be careful not to do that and make sure. Anyway, don't start it in there and then walk away thinking you'll remember later, because if you forget something because you walked away, if somebody calls you, say, just a minute, and you tighten it all the way up. Here's another thing. Don't leave any vehicle with a dry crankcase or bad brakes without disabling the vehicle so it can't be started and driven. You know, I was talking about this, and I should have put that picture in this PowerPoint of that, you know, I showed you guys that picture yesterday. This one guy took the stoplight switch off this Bronco too, I mean big Bronco, and he was doing an electrical worksheet, and it became time to go, and so he just left it all unhooked. When you take the stoplight switch off, you've also disconnected the push rod from the brakes, and the brake pedal is swinging, it's not even touching the brakes. So the guy, one of the dual enrollment students, got in it next morning wanting to drive that vehicle out and park it because it was in the way. And these guys that were on this, right in front of him on the other lift on this old Honda car, were sitting there trying to get ready to start doing some run out measurements or whatever. And so he cranked it up, got it in drive, it went forward, he couldn't stop it, it knocks the vehicle off the lift and it caused a problem. And, you know, it didn't cause as much damage as it could have, and nobody got hurt, but the simple fact was, the guy that took the truck apart did not, there was a bunch of things, it's a perfect storm. The guy that took the thing apart didn't put it back together like he should have. He didn't disable the vehicle so it couldn't be driven. He didn't put a note on it saying brake pedal's unhooked.
So, don't you press the brake pedal to change the gears?
Only, not on that one, that's an older one. This was an '89 model.
Well, mine
That
does
was
the same thing, I don't have to press brake pedal to show the gear.
Yeah, now they started that. You know why they started doing that? The reason they started doing it was because years ago, Audis they were complaining these Audi vehicles were taking off backwards and running into things right after people started them up. Wasn't a problem with the car. It was driver error. What they found out, an insurance company investigated all those incidents where the cars took off and ran into something after they. What happened was they would have their foot on the gas, they would put it in reverse, and it would surge backward a little bit. What happens when you got your foot on the gas and it surges backwards a little bit? It throws you against the gas pedal. And the more it throws you against the gas pedal, the faster it goes backwards, and you can't get off of it, and bam, you hit something. So what they said was, instead of allowing people to have their foot on the gas pedal when they put it in reverse, because just one accident can kill somebody, right? Instead of having it where you can put your foot on the gas and put it in reverse, we're going to make it where they have to put their foot on the brake to get it out of park. We had to retrofit a bunch of 87, 88, and 89 model Jeeps when I was there, by putting a different shift cable on them that would interlock that way. But I see what you're talking about. And that's like the clutch switch on the ones with a manual transmission. You got to mash the clutch to start them. Now in the early 80s, Volkswagen Rabbits didn't have that. And some other guy pulled a vehicle into my service bay that it was one of the other guys. He pulled it in there and parked it and says, do this for me. And so I did this, and he said, wait a minute, weren't you going to set the idle speed? Well, when I park one, I always have it in neutral. Right? I left it in neutral by default because I want to move it around so the lift would work better. This was at the dealership. And it was facing a concrete wall about, as far as from here to there. And so he says, and everybody's kind of standing here, and he said, wait, you were going to set the idle speed. And I said, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And being used to my own practices, I just went in and reached in there and started it up, and he had left it in first gear, and it took off and ran into the wall. Now it didn't hurt the vehicle, but it, that's amazing to me. It didn't hurt the vehicle, but it caved the wall in. Scared the daylights out of the lady in the office, and there moved the file cabinets, and she was like, ah, because she thought a monster was coming in there with her. But the long and the short of it is, all of this stuff, and this is similar to what I'm talking about. Let's say, for example, you put all this stuff together, and you look over there, and this doesn't happen very often, but ever so often it will. You'll have a customer that'll say, wait a minute, I don't want this brand of oil, I want another brand of oil, or something like that. Or they say, well, they sent me the wrong oil. Well, I don't like this, or whatever it is. Like, I'm going to have the other oil. So you haven't poured any oil in it, you got the filter, you got the plug in there, and you're waiting for the right oil to come from the parts store, whatever happens. And let's say that you managed to lower it, and somebody else didn't know it, and they started up before anybody pours oil in, and they even destroyed something, right? You say, well, I'm trying to prevent you from making the kind of mistakes that are like career-ending opportunities. But safety purposes, vehicle damage purposes, if you've done something, think forward. If you think something could happen because of what I'm doing here, if somebody else comes along, you see, got me? All right. When you're parking a customer's vehicle outside, don't leave the windows down even if the weather's clear. One of the guys parked this Thunderbird outside years ago when I was working at the dealership, and the sunroof was open, and he didn't think anything about that because it was kind of overcast. He didn't look up. He just parked it outside, rolls the windows up, didn't even notice the sunroof was open. It rains, like that, and the sun comes out. Then the lady comes to pick up her car, and as soon as she sits in the seat, splash. This wasn't pretty. This was bad news, man. I mean, she got loud and ugly in a big way, but it was because the guy wasn't paying attention. It was like, hey, not my car, I don't care. You know, I mean, don't have that attitude, you know what I mean? Treat it like it's your car, or your mama's car, or your sister's car, or somebody's car that you're concerned about. All right, when you do an oil change along with another service operation, let's say, well, I had one guy over here, one of the dual enrollment students, pulls the Crown Victoria over there on the rack. Hey girl, how you doing? Give me those, I got those 3 copies in there. Oh, you guys hang on just a second, I'll be right back. Read that, think about it, make a remark or two. I ain't gonna be gone in about a minute.
Make a remark or two. These ones.
I did 90 the whole ride.
Huh?
I did 90 the whole ride.
Did you get in trouble?
Nope. Got rolled up. And the principal ripped it up.
He's like, this is stupid, really, 10 minutes late. He can understand because you got,
Yeah.
principals on there.
All right, I had to give her some work to do. Okay, when doing an oil change along with another service operation, he pulls the Crown Victoria on the lift over here, and he's got tire rotation and oil change, okay? So he brings it up, he does the oil, he drains the oil and he puts the drain plug back in, he tightens it up, he puts the oil filter back on. And then he brings it down about waist high and he does his tire rotation. And he's talking and he's rotating and balancing, he actually rotates and balances the tires. But he's forgot that he hasn't put oil in it. You see where this is headed?
That's why, I would check their dipstick before you put it in there.
Yeah, I mean, well, like basically, when you pour the oil in it, it's not a bad idea to look and see if it's going all over the ground. You know what I mean? And when you start it up, you look and make sure that it's not pouring all over the ground. And yeah, I mean, one time, about 2 semesters ago, I was talking on the phone and talking to students and all, and had the stupidity to be doing an oil change while I was doing all of that, because we were swamped in here. I mean, and this happens, you know, we get so much stuff to do, we can't get it all done. So I, somehow or another, I can't remember, I started it up. The oil filter was the wrong one. And it was one of them situations, and they had to go get it and bring it back, and somehow I managed to start it up without the oil filter on it. Of course, we only ran for half a second, but it made a puddle like, you know, this big around. And so I had to stop everybody and say, look what I did. I cranked it with that. I mean, that's how, if you're distracted when you multitask, you know what I mean? I didn't need to be doing an oil change while I was talking to the parts and talking to everybody else. You need to be focused on what you're doing. That's the point. This guy almost started the car without oil in it, because I said, stop, wait a minute, have you poured the oil in the car yet? And he was like, ooh, you know, could have destroyed the engine right there. See what I'm saying? And that's true anytime if you've got, like I say, anytime you've got anything that you're doing, if you make a misstep that you could destroy something. Leaving certain bolts loose would be a bad idea. Yeah, come on in. Are y'all doing enrollment students? Yes, sir. All right, well, we need to, now have you, have y'all been to see Deborah Hudson yet? Up there? Okay, you need to get her to get you into the system, okay?
Yes, sir.
So that's not a problem. I mean, it's not a problem that you're here, but you sit down over there and listen and finish what I'm, and then I'll send you to see Deborah Hudson, because she's probably just now getting here. And you guys, what are your names, by the way?
I'm Blake.
Huh?
Andrew.
Say that again?
Blake, Spotty, and Andrew. Andrew Miles.
Yeah, I think I've seen you guys on my list in there. But she's got to seal your, finish your registration and everything. But anyway, when you're doing an oil change along with another service operation, always complete one operation before beginning the other. That's the whole point. See, what he should have done was lowered the car, put the oil in it, crank it up, make sure that's okay. Maybe put a sticker on there and all that, and then raise it up, and then do the tire rotation instead of trying to do it all at one time. Now here's another one. Being a really good mechanic doesn't give you a license to be a jerk. You ever been around anybody that was really good at their job and they were a jerk just because they felt like it was okay for them to be a jerk because they were, you know, you can be really good at your job and be a jerk and still be somebody that nobody wants to have anything to do with. That's a getting along with people thing, right? What I used to do when I was working, when somebody would come over there to me and ask a question, I would answer their question. In other words, like another mechanic would come over there and he'd say, what do you think is the problem with this? Well, this one guy that I worked with, his name was Mark. Well, there's a couple of guys named Mark. This guy right here, he came over there and we were doing drivability work. That means you're making the vehicle run right when it doesn't run right. If it doesn't idle, you gotta make it idle. If it skips, you gotta make it stop skipping. If there's black smoke, you gotta make it stop black smoking. If the check engine light's on, you gotta find out why. You gotta figure out how to turn it off and fix it where it won't come back on, this kind of thing. So he comes over and he goes, I'm having problems with this Ranger over here. I can't get it to idle right. And I said, well, pull this off there, wash that out, do this, set that, pull this up, plug it to where, set it to where it's out at about 500, plug it back on, you know, have the battery unhooked for a little bit, put it back on, see what that does. You know, and he managed to remember all this stuff and write it down. And whenever he went through it, and it fixed it, he says, well, you must have run into this before. And I said, no, I never have. I just knew what to do. And then he could get me by the throat. But anyway, I helped him out. That's the point. Some people won't give you any information at all. You know what I mean? I would always do that. There was another story I told about this guy where he started playing his head-banging music on the radio. He had been playing a radio station we both kind of liked, but then he starts playing some kind of head-banging music that was driving me up the wall. So I said, stop playing that music, you're driving me crazy. They said, turn it back to that radio station. So he gets in my face and he says, I like that radio station and I'm not turning it down. Well, I just opened the doors on my service bays and it was wintertime and I was in there working. I like it where it's hot anyway. Or, you know, I like it where it's cold anyway because I'm hot natured. And he says, man, it's cold in here. Pull those doors down. I said, I like those doors up and I'm not putting them down. So he comes over there and he says, okay, I'll change the radio station, but it's not because you got the doors up. Now put those doors down. Well, anyway, I got what I wanted. He got what he wanted. He got a warm place to work and I got music that didn't drive me crazy. Come on in, Cage. We're running through a little something here. I got some really fun stuff for you to do. You got to re-practice the brake systems and all that. All right. Now then, don't plunder in the console or the glove box of a customer's car just to see what they have in there. You ever seen anybody do that? Why? What's the point? What are you going to do? You know what I mean? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in there that you got no business looking at. Now, occasionally, you might have a situation where you have to take the console out to do some work that legitimately needs to be done. There's screws in the bottom of the console you can't get to with all that stuff in there. But I always try to put it back in and neater than it was before, because a lot of times people throw trash and old gum wrappers and all that. I throw away the trash and I put the good stuff back in there and I stack it in there really nice and I put their little Gideon Bible right on top and all this kind of stuff. Well, the simple fact is, some people feel like they have to plunder in a glove box, and just because they like to know what other people have. I never really cared anything about doing it. I'll tell you something else too. Don't change the radio station. And I may have that in a slide that's coming after this on somebody else's. Oh, here you go. Don't take any of their ashtray coins or their chewing gum or anything else you think they won't notice. Don't take their stuff. Leave their dadgum stuff alone. That ain't your car. There was a guy who had complaints started surfacing from customers, and they said, change keeps coming up missing out of my car. I mean, you know, this person, that person, different customers complaining. So what they did was, and well, there's a couple of ways that they sting people, I guess. This one guy, this one front end mechanic that was doing alignments, but kept taking money out of the car, and so the fixed operations manager had his daughter's Mustang brought in there, and he laid some quarters up there where they were really easy to see. And nobody had been in the car by that guy, and whenever he got it back, those quarters were gone, and the guy got fired for stealing money out of people's car. And he stole like $1. And I don't know what else he got. There was another guy, when I was over visiting one time, they said, we think this porter that pulls the cars around is taking change out of people's, you know, ashtrays and stuff, because they noticed that change is gone, that it's not all gone, they just know some of it's gone. So he got some quarters and he marked them in a particular way where you couldn't tell they were marked. And so he put them in my coin tray. He told me he was going to do it because I had an oil change done just because I wanted to visit while I was there. So the porter pulls it around, and he's the only one that's been in it. And so the service manager comes up and says, take everything out of your pockets and lay it right here. And when the kid took it out of his pocket and laid it right there, there was those quarters that were marked. See what I mean? Got him red-handed. And so we give him his last check and he sent him on his way. Now what's that guy gonna say? I worked over there and got fired for stealing. You see what I'm saying? Don't go there. You're a whole lot better off to be the person that would never steal anything. Sometimes they would pay me wrong when I was at the dealership. They would accidentally pay me using the wrong method, and I would wind up with several $100s more than I was supposed to get. And I would go into the payroll office and they said, "What's this?" They said, "What do you mean?" I said, look at all this money. This is about $300 or $400 more than I usually get paid." "Oh, wow, we paid you wrong." So we'll take that and fix it, and I want to see this write them out on my check next time. See, the thing about it is you got to have the kind of conscience that won't say, who has ever been given back the wrong change at a grocery store? All right, you've been raised right, you're going to give it back to them, right? You're going to say, "Look, you gave me too much money." The money's not worth as much to me as my integrity. You see, this one guy that was telling, I heard on radio the other day, said when he was a teller in a bank, he accidentally strapped a stack of $50 bills in a $1 bill thing, and he gave this lady a stack of 50s thinking he was giving her a stack of ones. It was like $2,500 that she walked out of there with, and she never came back. Then there's on the other side of the coin, there's a guy that saw this bag of money fall out of an armored truck, and they drove off and left it, and he picked it up and took it to the armored truck company and says, "Look, your guys dropped a bag of money and there's like $60,000 in there." And they says, "Why would you bring this back?" And he said, "It's not my money. I'm just trying to help you guys out." You know what I mean? I mean, he opens it up and sees all these $100 bills in there all bundled up. I mean, think about it. You know what I mean? Nobody would have been the wiser. He could have stole it, but he had integrity. Integrity is important. Don't change the radio station. Turn the radio off if you don't like what's playing. Have you ever watched me pull one in, the radio's playing, when I get in it, like if the customer pulls it up and they want us to do some work and the radio's banging away on something like that, I turn off the radio. If I can figure out how. Well, some of these daggum CD players, you can't figure out how to turn them off. You know what I mean? You figure, maybe turn them down, but I mean, they had the knob where you can't, I mean, the little button on some of them where you can't figure out. They did that for years. They ain't quite as bad to do that. I knew one guy, here's another story, that was doing Saturday work over at the dealership, and this guy had a really nice radio in his car, and so he had the doors open and the guy's radio blasting away on his favorite station while he was changing the oil. And the customer happened to hear that and looked out into there through the window into the service department and saw what was going on and threw a screaming fit at the service manager, and the guy got fired for that. All the stuff you can get fired for. In Alabama, they can fire you if they don't like the way you comb your hair. When replacing something like a water pump, glue the gasket to the pump instead of the mating surface. It makes things easier for the next guy. You got that? There's another little thing, backing up a couple of slides. Always tell the truth. Because if you always tell the truth, and they know you always tell the truth, whenever it comes to somebody else's word against yours, they're going to give your word more weight if you're the guy that always tells the truth. Okay, what I'm saying? I believe that guy because he don't lie. I don't know about this guy, but I believe this guy. See what I'm saying? Because this guy would not tell, you know, and also, if you make a mistake, one time there was this guy there was a bank president from some bank down in Florida, a little silver-haired guy. Now this guy was something else. He was not going to be taken without a fight. He had a gun here, he had a gun in the glove box, he had it in the trunk of the car because I had to get back there to work on his stereo, his CD changer thing. He had a crowbar and he had a chrome riot shotgun back there. So if anybody's trying to take this guy, they're going to get shot and hit with a crowbar and everything else. He's an old white-haired man, he had a lot of money. Well, I had to take the back seat out of his car because we were putting a CD changer in there. I had to pull a radio out of the dash, had to run some wires, had to do all kinds of stuff to make that thing work. And while I was taking a seat out of the car, if you ever take a seat out of the car, you know it's got these things, you know, ears coming off of it, bolt, all this kind of stuff. And somehow or another, because it was the other guy parked in the next service bay a little too close, I'm fighting with this seat trying to get out of the car, and somehow I scratched the paint on that Lincoln right behind the back door on the left side. You know, dug a little trench in the paint. So I went to the guy that was the fixed operations manager. He's actually over the service manager. And I says, "Look, I scratched the paint on this guy's car." You know, what do? You know? And so he went and got the guy. And the old guy, I'm thinking, I don't know what kind of guy this is, but you know, with all these guns and everything, what's he going to say when he comes out here? Well, the guy came out there and he looked at it and he ran his hand across it and he says, "Don't worry about it, I'll drive it. If I get to where I can't live with it, I'll come back and let you guys work on it or something. I mean, come back and let's fix it." Because we have a body shop, you know. And all that. So if you mess up, just tell them you messed up. They would rather have you come and say, "I bent this, I did that," or whatever, you know, try not to go to the donut shop or Hardee's on somebody's car, because that's not a good thing either, because if they happen to see you, they throw a fit about that, that's not good, you know. There's one guy that I know of,